When a narcissist sees strength in you, something fundamental shifts in their internal landscape. For years, their interactions with others have been predicated on a predictable formula: charm, manipulation, emotional pressure, and control. They learn to operate in a world where their sense of self is reinforced by the reactions of others. When you comply, doubt yourself, or seek their approval, their world feels stable. You become a mirror reflecting their own constructed identity, and in that reflection they feel whole. But when they encounter someone who refuses to shrink, who does not bend, who maintains clarity in the face of manipulation, the mirror breaks. Suddenly, the sense of control they relied upon is threatened. They cannot rely on your reactions to validate their story anymore. They are confronted not by an enemy, but by a reflection of reality they have long avoided. Strength in you reveals the fragility of them. And for someone who has built their identity on control, fragility is intolerable. At first, their response is subtle. They test boundaries more intensely, watching for cracks in your composure. They may push, provoke, or tease in ways that feel minor but are strategically calculated. This is their way of regaining a sense of mastery over the situation, of reminding themselves that the world can still bend to their will. Every manipulation is measured. Every word is chosen to assess whether your strength can be destabilized. Psychologically, this is fascinating because it reveals the narcissist's internal paradox. They crave admiration and validation, yet the presence of someone strong exposes what they cannot have: authenticity in themselves. Their identity depends on illusions, on performance, on bending reality to fit their narrative. When someone refuses to participate in that illusion, they experience fear, confusion, and anger simultaneously. Their instinct is to escalate the tactics that have worked before. Even if these tactics are no longer effective, they may try to charm, intimidate, provoke, or guilt you, shifting between extremes in an effort to regain equilibrium. Strength is intimidating because it cannot be coerced. It cannot be confused. It cannot be borrowed or stolen. And this lack of control generates a kind of desperation that manifests as increased manipulation. Every conversation becomes a test. Every reaction from you is scrutinized. They are calculating, anxious, and reactive at once, trying to reestablish the dominance that your independence threatens. But here is the crucial insight. The more you resist being drawn into their game, the more their strategies reveal themselves. Strength is not about confrontation or aggression. It is about presence, clarity, and self-possession. You do not need to argue, to defend, or to prove anything. Your stability becomes the measure against which their instability is exposed. And the more they attempt to control you, the more obvious their desperation becomes, both to themselves and to anyone observing the dynamic. This is why your strength is inherently transformative. It is not just about protecting yourself. It is about revealing truth through your presence. The narcissist's tactics, when applied to someone strong, no longer conceal anything. They illuminate. And in that illumination, you are not only safe, but powerful, because your clarity is a mirror they cannot manipulate. Strength in the face of a narcissist is not a weapon, it is a revelation. And the first time they realize that their usual tactics no longer work, the illusion of control begins to collapse, quietly, irreversibly, in a way that cannot be undone. When a narcissist sees that your strength cannot be easily shaken, the gaslighting intensifies. At first, it may appear subtle, almost imperceptible, like a whisper questioning your memory or a small suggestion that your perceptions are flawed. But it is purposeful. Gaslighting is not random, it is a strategy born from fear. They are confronted by the reality of someone who refuses to comply, and their instinct is to regain control by destabilizing your trust in yourself. Gaslighting works because it targets the foundation of human experience, perception. For a narcissist, the world only makes sense when others are aligned with their narrative. When someone challenges that alignment through authenticity, it creates cognitive dissonance they cannot tolerate. Rather than confronting their own fragility, they attempt to transfer that fragility onto you. They hope that if you doubt yourself, you will again become malleable, predictable, and contained within the boundaries of their control. The danger of this tactic is that it can be gradual. At first, it may feel like minor confusion or self-questioning. Did I really say that? Did I misinterpret it? The narcissist knows that the mind is pliable under stress and repetition. By gently undermining your confidence over time, they aim to reclaim influence without appearing aggressive. They create a fog in which reality becomes negotiable and where your strength can be tested for weaknesses you may not even know you have. But here is the key. Gaslighting is only effective against someone who doubts their own inner authority. Your strength, your awareness, your clarity, your presence acts as a shield. When you are grounded in your perception of reality, their attempts at distortion begin to lose power. You notice the inconsistencies. You see the repeated patterns. You recognize the motivations beneath the manipulation, and in doing so, you no longer participate in the illusion. Psychologically, this is crucial. Narcissists rely on projection. They accuse you of behaviors they themselves are engaging in. They twist the narrative so that the fault seems yours, and they seek to make you feel unstable or unreasonable. The aim is not to enlighten, not to negotiate, but to regain dominance over a system they once controlled effortlessly. Your strength interrupts that system. Your clarity dismantles it quietly, like a light entering a shadowed room. This is why gaslighting escalates when you are strong. They may move from subtle distortion to more obvious attempts at manipulation, hoping to provoke a reaction that reestablishes control. But in that escalation lies their vulnerability. The more transparent their tactics become, the more their insecurity is revealed, not just to you, but to anyone watching. And because you are strong, you respond not with defensiveness or anger, but with calm observation. You see the pattern, and you do not feed it. Strength in this context is not about winning an argument or exposing them immediately. It is about retaining your internal authority, refusing to let their distortion dictate your experience. The ultimate irony is that the more they try to destabilize you, the more visible their fear and desperation become. Their dirty tricks backfire, exposing the fragility they have worked so hard to conceal. In the end, the gaslighting that once held sway over others cannot touch someone who knows themselves. Your awareness becomes the mirror that cannot be broken, the reality they cannot rewrite, and the unmovable force that quietly but inexorably ends the game before it even begins. When a narcissist sees that you are strong, one of the most common strategies they employ is the deliberate creation of drama. This is not random chaos. It is a calculated attempt to destabilize your calm and draw you back into their orbit of emotional reactivity. Strength intimidates them because it cannot be coerced or controlled, so they attempt to provoke fear, guilt, or sympathy, emotional states that make people compliant without requiring overt force. Drama becomes their weapon, and the emotional storm is the arena in which they hope to regain dominance. The interesting thing about this tactic is that it is deeply rooted in their psychology. Narcissists are experts at scanning the environment for patterns of control. They have learned that people who are grounded, confident, or self-aware are less easily manipulated. When confronted by strength, they experience a kind of existential panic, because their entire identity depends on influence and the perception of power. Creating chaos is a way to engineer a scenario in which they can reassert themselves, even temporarily. This chaos can take many forms. It might be sudden outbursts of anger, designed to make you second-guess your own behavior. It could be a crisis of urgency that forces you to respond to a manufactured problem. Sometimes it is subtle, like sowing seeds of doubt among mutual connections or introducing emotional confusion to make you question your judgment. The common thread is that all of these maneuvers are designed to interrupt your equilibrium and make you emotionally accessible again. From a psychological perspective, the narcissist relies on reactive patterns in others as a form of supply. They do not merely want your attention, they need it to feel validated. Calm, grounded strength denies them that supply. When you refuse to engage in reactive drama, their sense of control is threatened. In response, they escalate the stakes, intensifying the emotional pressure, hoping to provoke a response that reestablishes the familiar dynamic. But here lies the paradox. The more they attempt to provoke you, the more transparent their strategy becomes. Emotional storms only have power when someone participates in them. When you remain steady, observing without reacting, you illuminate the artifice. Their manipulations become obvious, not only to you, but to anyone who witnesses the interaction. Strength does not need to argue, defend, or explain itself. It simply exists, unshaken, and in doing so, exposes the fragility behind the chaos. Drama is a distraction from reality, a way of rewriting perception, and yet it is powerless a guy. NST, someone who understands their own boundaries. The more a narcissist tries to destabilize you, the more they reveal the internal panic that drives their behavior. Emotional storms, when met with calm observation, reveal that the threat they perceive is not in you, but in themselves. This is why the ultimate lesson in encountering such tactics is clarity. Strength is not measured by aggression or confrontation, but by the ability to hold presence in the midst of provocation. When you respond from your own grounded awareness rather than the reactive narrative they attempt to script, you reclaim the field entirely. The drama that was meant to control you becomes the very mechanism by which their fear and fragility are exposed. In the end, emotional storms lose their power against the calm observer. The more they try to provoke, the more obvious it becomes that the real instability lies not in you, but in them. Strength does not fight fire with fire. It simply stands steady, letting the storm dissipate on its own, leaving the manipulator exposed and powerless. One of the most insidious tricks a narcissist will try when they recognize your strength is to isolate you, to undermine your relationships and support system. They know instinctively that your independence is fortified by connection, by the presence of people who see and validate your reality. The stronger you are, the more dangerous that connection becomes to them. And so, like a subtle strategist, they attempt to fracture the networks that sustain your clarity. This usually starts quietly. They may cast doubt on the intentions of friends, family, or colleagues, planting seeds of suspicion that you might unconsciously nurture. They may question your judgment about someone you trust, or suggest that your supporters do not have your best interests at heart. It is never framed as attack. It is framed as guidance, concern, or even love. The tactic is subtle because they know that overt aggression would expose them, while subtlety can erode your confidence without immediate detection. The psychology behind this behavior is straightforward. Narcissists rely on control over perception. Your strength challenges their need for dominance. If you maintain strong connections outside their influence, you are not as easily swayed or manipulated. In their mind, the only way to regain control is to weaken your external support, to make you feel more vulnerable and alone. Loneliness is a powerful tool. It makes the familiar patterns of manipulation feel comforting, and it increases the likelihood of compliance. What makes this particularly dangerous is that it can feel almost organic, almost rational. You may find yourself questioning whether you are misreading their intentions, or whether your relationships are truly stable. A narcissist's skill lies in making their manipulations seem like natural consequences or casual observations, rather than deliberate attempts to destabilize. The more secure and perceptive you are, the more cunning the strategy becomes. But strength exposes this tactic for what it is. When you recognize the pattern, you understand that any effort to isolate you is not a reflection of reality. It is a reflection of their fear. They fear that the support and clarity you receive from others will remind you that your power does not come from them, that your resilience is independent. And because they cannot withstand that truth, they attempt to rewrite it by undermining your bonds. Psychologically, this is a form of defensive projection. The narcissist cannot tolerate the idea that someone could exist outside of their control. Every connection you maintain that affirms your reality is a threat to the structure they have spent a lifetime constructing. To fracture it is their attempt to reassert dominance, but it is also an admission. They fear exposure. They fear the very thing you embody: independence, clarity, and self-trust. The key to navigating this tactic is awareness. Strong people do not allow their relationships to be dictated by manipulation. They observe without internalizing, they verify without paranoia, and they maintain boundaries without guilt. Your connections are your anchors, and no external attempt at destabilization can diminish your internal foundation. By remaining grounded, you render their strategy ineffective. In the end, the attempt to isolate you only highlights their insecurity. The very energy they pour into fracturing bonds is an admission that your strength is real and that your resilience cannot be contained. The stronger your roots, the less their manipulation can take hold. And through this clarity, you see that the ultimate power does not lie in domination, but in connection, presence, and unwavering self-trust. The ultimate failure of a narcissist's manipulations becomes clear only when you fully embody your strength. They may try every trick in the book: gaslighting, provocation, isolation, projection. But there is a limit to what manipulation can achieve against someone grounded, self-aware, and conscious of their own boundaries. In trying to control someone stronger than themselves, they inevitably expose their own fragility. Their strategies, no matter how calculated, become transparent, because strength does not respond the way submission or fear would. What they fear most is not confrontation, it is exposure. Narcissists live in a carefully constructed world where their identity is defined by control, deception, and perception management. When they encounter someone whose inner authority cannot be shaken, their illusions begin to crumble. The more they attempt to manipulate, the more obvious their desperation becomes. Every subtle distortion, every attempt to provoke, every insinuation meant to isolate only reveals the truth they have been avoiding. They are not in control, and they never have been in the way they believed. There is a deep psychological truth here. Manipulation is only effective against minds that can be bent, realities that can be blurred, and hearts that can be unsettled. When you refuse to participate in the distortion, when you hold your awareness steady, the manipulator loses their leverage. They cannot twist what is anchored in clarity. They cannot frighten someone who refuses to fear their projections. And in that refusal, the narcissist's ultimate weakness is laid bare. Their power has always been dependent on your compliance. The irony is profound. Every tactic designed to dominate you ends up highlighting their own inadequacies. Their attempts to provoke a reaction, to distort truth, or to fracture your support system only succeed in showing the stark contrast between their instability and your resilience. While they try to maintain control, you are free to observe without judgment, free to respond without fear, and free to act in alignment with your own values. Their game, once subtle and secret, becomes conspicuously transparent. Philosophically, this is a moment of revelation. The stronger you are, the more the narcissist's manipulations lose meaning. They are like shadows attempting to move in the light. You can see their edges clearly, and you are no longer fooled by illusions. Their need for dominance and validation is exposed as what it always was, a desperate attempt to fill an emptiness they refuse to confront. And while they scramble to restore an illusion of control, your strength remains unshakable, untouched by the chaos they create. Spiritually and psychologically, this demonstrates a crucial point. Your power lies not in defeating them, but in refusing to play their game. It lies in your clarity, your boundaries, your self-respect, and your presence. When a narcissist's manipulations are met with grounded awareness, their strategies collapse, not because you fought harder, but because their system of control depends entirely on participation. Without it, it cannot function. Ultimately, the ultimate trick of a narcissist, the one they believe will regain control, becomes their undoing. Your calm, your clarity, your unwavering presence turns their maneuvers into mirrors reflecting their own insecurity, fear, and fragility. The more they try to dominate, the more obvious it becomes that their power was never real. In trying to control someone stronger, they reveal the truth they have long avoided, that their influence is fragile, conditional, and dependent on the very submission they cannot command. From you. Your strength is the revelation. Your presence is the boundary that cannot be breached. And in that simple truth, the ultimate lesson is clear. The power of a narcissist exists only where you give it, and when you refuse, their ultimate dirty trick fails, leaving nothing but the emptiness they have created for themselves. As you step fully into your strength, something unexpected happens. Your healing, your clarity, and your presence begin to reflect back onto the narcissist in ways they cannot contain. They are accustomed to shaping reality, dictating narratives, and bending others' perceptions to maintain their sense of superiority. When you refuse to comply, when you maintain your boundaries and your self-respect, you expose a truth they have worked a lifetime to avoid, that their power is conditional, reliant on the compliance and submission of others. This is why your healing becomes, unintentionally, a form of judgment, not judgment in the moral sense, but in the psychological and spiritual sense. Each step you take toward freedom, each boundary you assert, each moment of self-possession acts as a mirror, reflecting the emptiness and fragility they have tried so hard to hide. It is not your responsibility to teach them a lesson or prove anything. Simply existing as whole, autonomous, and aware is enough to disrupt the dynamics they depend on. The narcissist may react in a variety of ways. Some escalate with anger, blame, or criticism, attempting to undermine your confidence and bring you back into the familiar cycle. Others may feign charm or offer reconciliation, hoping that your growth will be slowed or manipulated. They may attempt to project their own faults onto you, accusing you of the very behaviors they exhibit in a last-ditch effort to regain psychological leverage. But no amount of projection or manipulation can succeed against someone who knows themselves. Psychologically, this phenomenon is rooted in projection and control. Narcissists cannot tolerate authenticity in others because it threatens the very foundation of their identity. Your strength illuminates the cracks in their facade, exposing not only their manipulations but also the fears and insecurities that lie beneath. Your clarity cannot be argued away, and your presence cannot be coerced. In essence, your healing becomes the yardstick by which their instability is measured. This is why the process can feel unsettling. It may stir guilt, compassion, or even fear within you. You may question whether your growth is causing them harm, whether your independence feels like abandonment. But the truth is that their discomfort is not a reflection of wrongdoing on your part. It is the natural consequence of their encounter with someone they cannot dominate. Your rise is not punishment, it is revelation. Spiritually, there is a profound lesson in this dynamic. The universe does not intervene to punish the narcissist. It allows consequences to manifest in alignment with truth. Your emergence into strength and awareness is part of a natural order. Those who rely on manipulation to survive will inevitably be exposed when confronted by genuine autonomy. Your presence becomes a living testament to what is possible when one refuses to compromise the integrity of self. The beauty of this is that you do not need to strategize or fight to assert it. Every act of self-care, every refusal to be drawn into drama, every boundary you honor, amplifies your power. In that amplification, the narcissist's attempts to control you become increasingly transparent, highlighting their desperation, insecurity, and dependence on external validation. They are forced to confront their own limitations in a way that nothing else can provoke. Ultimately, your healing is the most profound reflection of truth a narcissist can encounter. It is not vindictive or reactive. It simply exists as a living, undeniable measure of what they cannot manipulate or possess. Each step you take toward clarity, autonomy, and self-possession is a step away from their control and a step into your own sovereignty. The ultimate insight is simple. Your rise, your healing, and your strength are not tools of revenge. They are the reflection of life lived authentically. And in that reflection, the narcissist sees themselves as they truly are, powerless over what they cannot dominate, confronted by the very integrity and resilience they have spent a lifetime avoiding.